And if you're thinking, hold on, how does government deficits negatively impact real estate borrowing? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we're about to unpack that. So how does eliminating the SALT cap lead to government deficits and thereby raising the interest rates, which is negatively impacting your real estate borrowing? Very simply, guys, when that SALT cap deduction is lifted, eliminated, expanded, however you want to say it, that's going to reduce the federal tax revenue. Ultimately, when the federal tax revenue is reduced, that could lead to an increase in the federal deficit. If the federal deficit increases, well, very simply, the U.S. government might need to borrow more money. If they need to borrow more money, that's going to increase interest rates, which is going to negatively impact your commercial lending. Very simply put, less tax revenue equals higher budget deficits unless government spending is cut elsewhere. Now, before you think that the U.S. government might not have to borrow any money, let me give you this statistic. Over the next 10 years, if the SALT cap is eliminated, that's over $500 billion that the U.S. government wouldn't have. Now, higher deficits lead to more government borrowing. The federal government funds budget deficits by issuing treasury bonds, which is borrowing money from investors. Now, if tax revenue falls due to the SALT cap being repealed, well, the government's going to borrow more money to cover its spending, and more money obviously is going to increase the supply of treasury bonds in the market. Now, the U.S. national debt exceeded $34 trillion, making treasury yields highly sensitive to government borrowing. What that means is the federal government has borrowed an enormous amount of money. It's got a track record of borrowing money to cover spending. Now, because the U.S. government funds its debt with treasury bonds, investors demand higher yields, which are your interest rates, when the government is borrowing more. Now, this makes borrowing more expensive for everyone, especially real estate investors. Now, treasury bonds serve as a benchmark for other interest rates, including those mortgages and commercial real estate loans, making it more expensive to finance properties. When the U.S. deficit surged in 2023, the 30-year mortgage rate climbed to 8%. Now, guys, I want to walk you through 2021, our interest rate was 3%. 2022, our interest rate was 5 to 6.5%. Early 2023, it was at 6%. October 2023, it was at 8%. When the government borrows money, the interest rates increase.